So WFP, we work a lot on maps in emergency context, but we work on a different case of emergency, mainly on conflicts and on natural disaster. We worked not only on the emergency context, but we work on the preparedness, so all the time before an emergency. Then we can work on the emergency itself. When something happens, we are here to provide all information, data, and maps that are needed for the different people who work in the organization. And then when we have emergency on a long time, we continue to provide this kind of services on the post-emergency part. We work a lot on different data and mainly on what we call the SDIT, the Special Data Infrastructure and Transport. We have a lot of data regarding the humanitarian corridors. We have a lot of data regarding the refugee camp, IDPs, or what we can have for aerial photographies and the satellite imagery. And we work mainly with inputs from the field. So what we can have from the field could be GPS coordinates, different locations, assessment form. So it could be everything. It could be map, it could be shapefile, and it could be just data in an Excel sheet. About the tools that we use during the different phase of the emergency. We use a different data repository, and mainly the one of OCHA, the official one. Plus, sometimes we can use other data repository like the one of UNEP in the case of natural disaster. For example, to get historic track of cyclone. When emergency happen in that case, we try to know what could be the different places who could be affected. Then we use some different tools from WFP, for example, the geoportal of the log cluster. I don't know, maybe you already heard about it. Until now we use it, but it will not be used anymore, since it's going to be replaced by a new tool developed by open source community, and WFP is part of this team, and the tool is called GeoNode. It's a new platform which allows you to visualize, edit, and share all your data. And the last tools that we can use are all mobile data collection, like smartphone, GPS, some software on a smartphone which is called EpiCollect, for example. Then I'm going to explain you the different constraints and problems to open the discussion later. Our main problem is about the data sharing. Data sharing within the organization at the different level between the headquarters and the field, and the data sharing between the different partners. Another problem that we face is using the same reference of data. We have the case often in Arabic countries, for example, where you can have different Arabic name, you could have different English name, and that makes things more complicated if we are not sure that we work on the same location. And then about the different problem, it could be by the final product, about the map, if the map has been made in the good way for the different people, if it's okay for them to use it, and if the information of the map is good for the people who are in the field directly, because we work mainly in the headquarters, and sometimes we don't have the direct inputs from people who use the last people who use the map. That's it. So I invite you to keep your question for the end, and we are going to go for the next presentation. Thank you.
So, hello together. My name is Svend-Jonas, and I'm a geographer and a master's program in the University of Heidelberg in Germany, but moreover, I'm a passionate crisis mapper and a member of the Standbyit volunteer task force. And today I learned I'm not the only one here, so Lukas and Timo, I'm glad you're here, so if I forget something to mention in my presentation, feel free to compliment. So I'm happy to present what the Standbyit Task Force is. So the task force was launched on the International Conference on Crisis Mapping in the year 2010 in Boston, and it was one of the results of the finding following the Haiti earthquake. And we are an online community for live crisis mapping, and since lately also for crowdsourced data preparedness. More importantly, we are a volunteer network, and we are at the moment about 900 volunteers from all over the world, and we are coordinating just online, so we rarely meet together. We are decentralized and a modular network of volunteers. That means that we are organized in teams. Once you enter the network, you will have to enter certain teams, and then you stick to this team. And we are acting on the basis of a code of conduct. We try always to work with open and volunteer data, because since we are a volunteer community, we want to collaborate with other volunteer communities and to add volunteer data. Also, we want to act as an open source model for digital volunteering. So everything we do, we try to make it transparent so that other volunteer communities can learn from us and that we can learn from them. So why are we a standby volunteer task force? It is mainly because we are acting on a standby mode, so we can be activated after or in an emergency situation by humanitarian response organizations. So we are not decide to deploy ourselves in a crisis situation. We wait that we are activated. Once we are activated, we are about to provide dedicated crowdsourcing, mapping, data scrambling. That's more concerning the disaster preparedness phase. And we are also doing technology testing, so we are collaborating with different other platforms who are doing crowdsourcing or crowd mapping. And our aim is to support the organizations in the humanitarian, human rights, environment, election, and monitoring space. So, for example, we cooperate with UNOCHA several times. We have been activated by Amnesty International USA, by UNHCR, also Al Jazeera was once an activator. So we have very, very different kinds of partners. We are a volunteer task force, and I really want to emphasize this. Nobody of the members of the task force gets paid for what we are doing. We are really doing it in our free time, and we are really from diverse backgrounds. So many of our members doing other jobs on their day-to-day basis, and they just chime in when they find time. But we also have many humanitarian professionals who support our network and who are members of our network. And all our members get trained inside our platform. So everybody can become a member of the task force, and there's no real professional knowledge necessary to become a member. We are a task force. I already mentioned that several times. We are doing crowd mapping in an emergency response. In disaster response, we are doing data scrambling, so we are collecting data. In the disaster preparedness, we have done it lately for South Sudan and also with ACAPS, with an NGO. And also this technology testing. So this afternoon we have a workshop from Timo Lugo about GeoPhedia, and GeoPhedia is also one of our partners, and we tested the crisis tracker platform lately. So what is crisis mapping about? It is composed of 4 components. It is firstly, we have to collect the information which is out there in the information ecosystem. So after a disaster, depending on where the disaster struck, the people make use of the information applications they have. It is here in Europe, mainly it is Twitter. It is in Netherlands, we had the case of a disaster, and there were several thousand tweets per minute or per second. And in for example, Haiti, SMS were extensively used. We have Flickr, we have email, YouTube, all the channels, and we try to collect the crucial information, disaster-related information, out of all this information ecosystem. We try to make sense making for the information. We analyze the information. Afterwards, we categorize it, and then we bring it on a map, because this is the most intuitive way to show what's going on the ground. And we share this information with the humanitarian professionals or with the humanitarian organizations which has activated us. So let me share just two very quick examples of past deployments, so you can have a better idea what we have done so far. Maybe the most impressive and famous example is the Libya crisis map. In 2011, everybody knows we had the Arabic Spring, and UNOCHA activated for the first time the StandbyTaskForce to collect crisis-related information about Libya. And within hours, the StandbyTaskForce set up the Ushahidi map. You see here a screenshot. And for several weeks, StandbyTaskForce volunteers gathered data, and afterwards this map was also handed over to UN volunteers. And this is a very nice example of a good crowd mapping effort. One of the thank you notes the StandbyTaskForce received contains information about what is really crucial when it comes to volunteer efforts to support the humanitarian professionals. So I underlined it in red. They said it definitely reduced the information overload after a disaster. The output that the StandbyTaskForce produced in the map, it was manageable and digestible, and it served for a better situational awareness and decision making. Another activation of the StandbyTaskForce was this summer. There was also from UNOCHA, not in an emergency situation, it was more like in a preparedness program, because UNOCHA wanted to deploy a field team in South Sudan, and they literally had no data about, no secondary data, and they wanted to have data gathered to have situational awareness. And you see one of the CODs, and there have no submitted data sets here. And the StandbyTaskForce was activated within 48 hours through the Digital Humanitarian Network, which is also very interesting, but I don't have the time to talk about that now. And the activity lasted for 3 days, and in 3 days the volunteers, I think it was 30 or 40 volunteers, not too many, collected over 1,700 rows of data and over 15,000 pieces of information record. It doesn't say anything about the quality of the data, but it tells us something about how quick volunteers can come together and gather a huge amount of data. I will skip that here. So let me just read some lines, because it's quicker now. So the power of digital volunteers is that people will use any available channel of communication to share and communicate their situation during crisis. And the online crisis mapping community can help to turn these communications into data that are actionable for the humanitarian responders, both local and international. And the volunteer crisis mapping community can respond to the demand of the traditional humanitarian responders who seek the ways to more effectively incorporate the community-generated data into their standard operation procedures. And I want to close with a map. I had a look on our platform today, and I saw something which made me really sad, because you see a map and you see how many members are listed for the Standbyit task force in France, and we have some in Paris and one in Lyon, and I would be happy to see a few more dots in a few weeks. So if you want to join the Standbyit task force, feel free to contact us, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Now we are going to have a presentation from Anthony Scott from MapAction.
Okay, so everything's sliding. I'm Anthony Scott from MapAction. As Rémi says, I come with some branding, so I'm pleased to have an opportunity to wear this nice shirt they gave me. But I want to give you a quick picture of MapAction and then maybe at the end raise a few issues that we might come back to in the discussion at the end. My slides are in French. I'm going to talk in English. I hope that's not too confusing. If you want slides in either French or English at the end, give me a card and I'll send them to you. So MapAction is an NGO, an international NGO, whose job is to provide maps and information to humanitarian organisations on the ground. And I would emphasise this role of on the ground. It's all about being there in the early stages of the disaster, being in a position to work with other agencies, work with UNDAC, work with the clusters, and dealing with the immediate humanitarian needs. So it's largely not about technology, it's not about anything high-tech or leading edge or bleeding edge. It's about being able to respond quickly and really often in a matter of hours to turn stuff around and to get information products out there to the people who are going to be able to use them and put them into action. We've done about 34, I think it's maybe 35 or 36 now, deployments since 2004. Why is all this important? I mean, why do people need maps? Well, you probably don't need too much convincing about that, but it's largely about just simple things like navigation in areas where there may not be good maps, there may not be, particularly post-disaster where things have changed following an earthquake or floods. And this concept is important, I think, of creating a common operational picture, of being able to pull together the data that's immediately available on the ground and putting it together into something which everybody is looking at, everybody is able to share, everybody is able to use it at the same time, making sure that there aren't any gaps, making sure that there aren't any overlaps. So it's a lot about coordination, I think, and avoiding duplication. This is the kind of data that we use: topographical, OpenStreetMap, crowdsourced data, imagery, anything that we can get our hands on. And this could be either before we go out, bearing in mind that we go out at very short notice, 24 hours, 48 hours notice, or data that we can get while we're on the ground. The part of this picture that we're involved in largely is in this immediate aftermath stage, the relief, 2 weeks, 4 weeks after the disaster. Very rare that we're still there after 4 weeks. Our job is largely done. We try to hand over to other organisations when we leave. We're also involved increasingly, though, in this top bit, disaster prevention and sustainable development. So we're starting to work a lot more with local disaster management agencies, doing capacity building, and that's most of what I've been doing in MapAction personally. So that's important to us too. So here we are. It's not all glamour and helicopters, but this is the kind of thing that we do 24 hours after an emergency. Sometimes we can be on the ground, and we take out with us all the kit that we need. So we take laptops, printers, GPS, satellite technology, on the basis that despite what some people have said, there isn't necessarily going to be any connectivity on the ground. So a quick run through the process. We get alerts, people get text messages, are you available, get the data together, get the equipment together, set up a support base at headquarters, and set up, this is the key, this is where it happens, setting up a base in the field alongside, in the OSOC, alongside the OCHA staff, alongside the other agencies, and start to put together the data that we need to produce maps. If necessary, we'll go out, collect our own data. working with other people. Sometimes we'll give other people GPSs and we'll say, okay, well, if you're going out to this region, take a GPS, take some tracks, take some points of interest, bring it back when you come back. We then put all that on the map, and we're sort of able to turn anybody into a data collector. And finally, dissemination. The main product is what you see down in the bottom right here. Paper maps, handed over to people, printed off as many times as they need. We can give them images, we can give them PDFs. What most people want is paper. We stick them up on the wall, and that's the currency. It's old tech, it's old school, but in the heat of the moment, paper is the most reliable medium. We do put everything that we produce online. It's available on our website pretty much after it's produced. So we do try to disseminate. These are the kind of partners we work with, NGOs, Red Cross, etc., etc. This is the kind of stuff we do, collecting data, creating maps, etc., etc. And as I say, paper, download. We're starting to look now, and this is one of the challenges for us. We're starting to look at making stuff available through web services, both in the field and from our website, and so that, for example, people can come along and pick up our data from a web service feed in the field from a local area network. That's something we're very interested in, and there's clearly a demand for, and we're starting to put together the technology that can do that for us. And these are our users, mostly these humanitarian organizations. Media is important as well. One of the things we try to do is make our maps in a form that can be used for the media to get the message out, to tell people what's happening on the ground. Here's a quick, this is probably covered by what I've already said. Data in, maps out, usual sort of model. This is what we've done over the last 10 years. There's a couple more recently. We've got some people in DRC at the moment. We've got people going to Nigeria this week. And just a few examples of the sort of maps we've created. This is a complex emergency. I'll run through this quickly because I'm short of time. Reference maps, general overview stuff. This is all about population, where the affected areas are. This one's about areas prone to flooding, so it's showing the land less than 10 meters above sea level. Evacuation plan for a volcano. So this is looking at where the villages are that are affected. Access constraints, where the roads are closed, etc. This is in Spanish, so I can't tell you too much about it. This is about floods, I think. So civil conflict in Kyrgyzstan. So just to give you an idea of the kind of stuff that we're producing, and we do attach a lot of importance to the marginalia and the cartographic stuff, the stuff that GIS people like, so that people can take our map away and look at it a week later and have some understanding of what it's about. So, run out of time. This is unexploded ordnance in Brazzaville this year. That was quite an interesting one. And as I say, largely about maps, also about capacity building, information sharing, knowledge, etc. One final plug, we've got a field guide to humanitarian mapping in English. If anybody wants to translate it into French, please come and see me, because we'd really like to have it in French as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next presentation will be from James from GeoVantage.
Good afternoon. How are you? My name is James Summerville. I'm from a company in the States called GeoVantage. And I'm going to be talking to you about how you actually collect the aerial imagery data that you'll need to do everything these gentlemen have talked about today. We'll talk a little bit about our concept of operations, our ConOps, for these collections. We're going to be using an example. Right now we're doing major cities in Australia. This is Melbourne, Australia. Our mapping system is an expedient mapping system that can be deployed at a moment's notice. It's a small system that uses in-country aircraft. We don't require dedicated aircraft that cost millions of dollars and have to be transported to the site. So our system is about 21 inches long and 12 pounds. Many of you may have seen it out front. It goes on Cessna 172, 182 class type aircraft. Anything small, single engine that's readily available throughout the world. 172s, 182s are widely proliferated. You can find them pretty much anywhere. So when we get a call for a crisis, basically we send a system via UPS, FedEx, DHL overnight to the affected area. We already have aviation partners worldwide established. We call them flight service providers. These flight service providers already have the aircraft ready to go. The system can be installed on the aircraft in 30 minutes. The pilots, if there's not a trained pilot on site, they can be trained, even if they've never seen or never flown aerial imagery before, they can be trained in 5 minutes to an hour. It's never taken me more than an hour to train a pilot on how to fly the system. It's a very intuitive system. The mission planning of the system is all KML Google Earth based. So we take a polygon. I could pick anybody in this room and have them plan a mission anywhere in the world in 5 minutes. It's a very intuitive type product. You just draw a polygon over the affected area, and basically the cloud spits out your mission plan, puts it onto the flight computer. The flight computer is then taken by the pilot to the aircraft, hooked up to the pod, to the system, and off he goes. Embedded in the KML and the mission planning aspect, we can predict the times and the number of images and the overall scope of the project. The flight altitude is pre-programmed in. We're getting about 15 centimeter resolution at 5,500 feet, which is about 2,300 meters. That's above ground level. So you're getting a very, very high resolution image of the area. That resolution also is affected by the altitude that you're flown. So why use this instead of satellite imagery? Well, if you're looking at an affected area that has an earthquake, that has floods, satellite imagery, you'll get about 45 centimeters resolution. That's the best that you can get. And you might have cloud cover. So this type of system, we fly underneath the clouds and we get much better resolution, and it's much more expedient than any type of satellite imagery that you're going to get. Now, the biggest thing about a crisis, and we've seen this happen many times, is you don't know what you don't know. So you go to a flood area. Recently I was at Hurricane Isaac in New Orleans, and we flew that. And you get CNN reports, you get Twitter reports, you get all these reports that are being compiled by the general public or reporters or the media and whatnot. And you go out there, you mission plan an area, and you get to the site, and you look down, and there's no flooding. There's nothing happening down there. So you have a false report, and you just wasted, time and personnel going out to research this stuff. So the best thing to do when you get to it, our concept of operations, is go out in the aircraft that you're going to use the aerial imaging device for and do your own surveillance of the area and mark your locations via GPS, come back, and you can mission plan it when you get back. That's our first thing that we do when we get to an area. Then we rely on reports from media and whatnot and from social media, and we will explore those areas as well. But when you have a localized flooding type event, especially flooding or earthquakes, you don't know what you don't know. Let's go a little bit further through this. These are all of our polygons, and this is how we plan everything. Let me get going here. We'll fly a polygon. The next problem flying imagery in a crisis situation is you dedicate assets to go do something, and you want to know that what you picked up, what you collected, is going to be good data. So in this particular case, you can see the flight lines that are flown by our pilot. Afterwards, we do something called a quick look, which is done within an hour after the pilot lands. It's a coarse mosaic, loosely geo-registered, overlaid, And we look for problems. We look for any gaps. You can also tell where major impacted areas are going to be in these quick look. As you can see on this particular one, this is a zoom in of that quick look. This particular client did not want cloud shadows, so we have cloud shadows. So before we deploy the asset somewhere else, we know within an hour that we need to send him back out to fix the problems. We quickly replan the mission when we find out there's issues. Pilot goes back out. He picks up the spot areas. Doesn't have to refly the whole thing. And then we blend it back in, and that's our completed mosaic, our final quick look with no issues whatsoever. So the main point that we've learned in our concept of operations is you don't know what you don't know, number one. Number two, you've got to make sure that the area that you picked up, the area that you imaged, is relevant and it's going to be good data that you actually picked up that folks like these can use as an underlay for all of their social media and all of their other tools that they're going to bring to the. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next presentation, Peter from GRC.
Hello, I'm Peter. I'm representing the European Commission. I'm working in DG GRC. This is our action. It's the emergency management service that we have created in April, so it's recent. Now, the road track or the roadmap from 2003-2004, we had risk, EOS, and so on through a safer linker, which probably for most of you rings a bell. And then in April, we started with the GMES, GeoEMS mapping service. We have a 10.2 million budget for which is spread over 3 years, and it's an operational service, which is important. Now, I will go quite quickly over this one, but we have non-rush products and rush products. So the rush products are on demand, they are standardized, and they are delivered in hours, days. So we talk about reference maps, so before the disaster, and we talk about disaster maps after the event, and this is mostly or primarily delineation and grading maps. And then we have also a non-rush mode, which is again an on-demand service, and it's widely adapted to the user's request. So it's actually not limited to reference maps and disaster response maps, but you can have post-disaster situation maps and pre-disaster situation maps and ask for any possible layer what you think is useful. Now, the important features are the following. So it's a standard product, it's a vector file as a default product, and it's widely used, we use widely used formats. So the product is an input for the user chain. This is important. Also the fact that the user should be aware of the product's features. So it's a contractual basis, it has fixed quality parameters, and it's well documented. And also the product's fully owned by the GRC or the European Commission, so it's easier for the distribution. It's free. Now, the GeoEMS, it's the first operational service of the European GMES program. Already mentioned, we have rush mode mapping, non-rush mode mapping, and we have also the validation. This is for the quality control. It's complemented by the ESA, European Space Agency DAP mechanism for the satellite data procurement. So normally when an activation is launched, immediately we go to the ESA DAP mechanism for ordering the VHR satellite imagery, and this is the whole range. And normally in 1 or 2 days, basically 1 day, depends on when the activation is triggered. When it's in the morning, we will have the images the day after. When it's in the evening, something like 4 or 5 o'clock, we will have it probably in 2 days. Of course, when there are no clouds. Already mentioned the kickoff was the 1st of April, and it's for 3 years that we are operational. Already mentioned 10.2 million budget. It's funded from the European Commission budget DG Enterprise, GMES, and we have a 24/7 focal point on DG ECHO in Brussels. It's the response center, and the technical coordination is done by us. Now, this is an important slide. This is who can trigger these activations. So we have a level 1, which are the authorized users. So these are the national focal points for the European member states. We have the European Commission services, and we have also the external service, which is the formal RELEX. This is now the European Union managing the external services. Now then we have also the associated users, which are the United Nations agencies, the World Bank, and all kind of different NGOs. We have, of course, all our EU delegation, and we have regional and public users. And then the level 3 is the general public, and this, you see the arrow just goes down. It's not possible to activate. Now, how you do this? You go to our portal, or you send an email, or your phone. So it's very quick. The activation then, the procedure for the activation starts then within 5 minutes. This is our rush mode product. So as already mentioned, reference, delineation, and grading. Reference from information before the disaster. After satellite delivery, maximum 6 hours. And delineation and grading, maximum 1 day after the satellite acquisition. The non-rush, the reference in 30 days, and the pre- and post-disaster also 30 days. But here you see it's much more extensive. It's obvious that the non-rush is probably not very urgent, but we need more work to work on the different layers that are requested. Key points. This is something I have already mentioned. So, okay, we can skip this. We do also we had in the morning a talk on the quality control and the quality issues. Well, we do quality reviews for each of the products. So the quality is assured. This is what happened since April. We have 20 activations. 60% of the activation and 78% of the map products were in Europe. So we had forest fires, earthquakes, and 3 other events. So blasts and floods. We had activations in Hungary, Italy, Bulgaria, Spain, Slovenia, Portugal, Romania, Germany, and France. And outside Europe, we had, I think, primarily floods in Cameroon and Niger. We had also in Timbuktu a problem with the Tuaregs, and I think this was for refugee camps. We are also very active in Syria, Jordania, and so on, Libya, related to refugee camps. And we work also together with the International Charter when necessary. We are close to the expected trend that we have more or less foreseen in 1 year. Very strange. We had no activations the last 6 weeks, but I have just heard lately that we are now active again in Nigeria, and we do also post-disaster needs assessments. So we will probably have to go there. We also support Kimberley and do other mapping products for the Ashton Day in Brussels. This is an animation of a refugee camp in Jordani, and this is in 2 months. So we're monitoring this every 2 weeks. And okay, this is just a screen dump of the imagery, but we do also kind of analysis. We know the number of tents and so on. We know how many people are living there, and the trend. This is requested by the German Civil Protection Service because they are funding that camp. This is the earthquake in Emilia-Romagna. Also there we have done a lot of work using airborne data of 10 centimeters. And this is a flood in Nigeria. No, it's Cameroon, this one. This is, we use radar imagery for detecting water bodies. Okay, this is it.
Thank you. So now I think we have times for questions, and we will try to answer to it. Yes, please. Do we have a microphone in the room? Merci.
My question to the last speaker, you mentioned the international charter some contact to the German Space Agency, DLR, and I think these people there are member of this International Charter Space and Nature Disasters. Is this International Charter something different from what you presented?
Yes, International Charter is delivering or making available data. They're not doing analysis on the data.
Okay, and I had the impression that the data your organization provides in this project can be more easily accessed than it is feasible for this international charter. I think this is a very closed club which doesn't share the data.
Which is
agencies.
But all data made by the International Charter is available on their portal. But as I already mentioned, the International Charter is providing data. If you go to the website or the portal of the International Charter, you see always data which is given available to a project manager, and that project manager is making kind of derived maps from that data. But that's something else. We are completely independent of what the Charter is doing. Of course, to avoid double work, we communicate and we collaborate with the International Charter.
And let us assume there could be an agency in Northern Africa. Could they ask for your services? Or could
well, I have shown a slide with authorized users and associated users. When that organization is an associated user, they can use the service.
Okay, thanks.
Another question?
I'm Jan from the ICRC. Just a question or more remarks. It shows that all of you are providing data, and from the data you are extracting information. And as the end users of the potential information provided by all of you, it shows that we have seen with MapAction you are in the mode of providing web services and these kind of things. With the data from StandbyTaskForce, sure it's accessible online, but to use this information for our own analysis into the GIS, it's sometimes a bit difficult. So I just would like to request, I would say, if it's possible to all of you, to provide web services, either with REST, either with WFS or this kind of things, because it shows that at the level of the crisis, for us in Geneva as well, we are following the crisis, and it's really important to get this information from all the potential organizations in order to take a conscious decisions.
Okay. Anybody?
I think it is quite difficult to provide everybody with the same data, because at the moment we don't even have a shared or a common data model on how we share data together. So even the UN agencies are not like, they don't have common data models, I think. So it's very difficult for us to deliver the data. So I think there's definitely the need to more collaboration in this kind of matter.
I don't think it's a matter of data model. In fact, what we would like to do is to be able to do a shopping list of the data that are already there, and the derived product as well, that you could put into your WebGIS, that you could mash up with your application or this kind of things. Because it shows that we really need to propose something with analysis from the person in the field, or with analysis collected from the StandbyTaskForce in this kind of things. And we have to really mash up with our own information. So basically we are requesting web feeds.
If I can answer from the WSP part, it's true that until this year we didn't we didn't provide so many data with web services for different problems in terms of data structure and the technology to use for services. But since since 2 months now, we have a new platform which is called the GeoNode. I talked about it a little bit earlier. And this platform will allow us to share all our data. If they are open, it will be open to everybody. And in terms of all data for transportation and a few other data of WFP will be available soon, I think before the end of the year, through the different services and directly available to everybody. And it will be directly linked to the database. So that means everybody will get, if they have the link of the services, the last update of the data at any time.
This is the same for the commission data sets that you have seen. We have a GeoPortal now running, but we are working on one in-house on Drupal, and all the information, of course not the imagery because this is licensed, but all the vector information will be available and ready for upload or download. But you will be able to use it in a GIS compliant format.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And as I said in my talk, MapAction are on the same track. We're maybe a little bit behind WFP, for example, but it is definitely our intention, both in terms of making data available in the field and also, in the wider community. I guess we have to also add the proviso that it's subject to connectivity and being able to get the data from the field back to the to our support base where they can do the web publishing. But yeah, subject to that, it's very much on our agenda. We're in sort of prototyping mode for that at the moment.
Other questions? Yes, we have two.
Hi, my name is Timo. I'm a consultant, and I'm a big fan of coordination. And I just thought it's interesting. What we have here is like we have basically 5 people who do mapping in emergencies, and everything from something more commercial to WFP to incident mapping to all these kind of things. And they're all very interesting products. But I sometimes, when I go to the field, I sometimes feel that these things happen not necessarily in a collaborative way, but that we're back to the famous silos. So I'm wondering, how many of you who are there are actually talking with each other, to incorporate the data that is collected by one of you into a product for everybody. Thank you.
I know in our case, we're, for lack of a better word, we're hired by an organization such as these, or somebody who has interest in the aerial imagery. So we're very much in coordination with whatever agency that is, and it may be a public agency, a governmental organization. It also might be a private organization, and as my colleague mentioned earlier, a lot of the imagery products are licensed by whomever pays for them. So there is a collaborative effort. However, sometimes it may not be as public as it should be.
And I agree we should avoid overlaps, but it happens. For example, in Nigeria, the flood in the morning was triggered. The international charter was triggered by the French Civil Protection Service at the evening. It was again triggered. Our service was then triggered by the same French Civil Protection Service. So then, of course, you have an overlap. So the reason of overlaps is not always the person who is, or the instance who is producing the maps, but also to the people who are triggering or activating services.
Yeah, I guess MapAction is in a sort of slightly in-between position because we're data users and map providers. So what we're trying to do in the field is to put our hands on whatever data that we can and turn that into something that the people that are sort of turning up at our shop front are able to use. So, we're interested in using any data that we can get our hands on, and certainly, anything that these guys have got available, we'll be trying to get hold of. We have a sort of network of volunteers who, spend that 48 hours between the time that we get called out to a disaster and the time that people get on a plane, putting together whatever data we can, and that process continues after we've got people deployed. I think the other point that you're sort of alluding to, which I think is an important one, is that it's important for us to be, not just to be able to react and kind of find data when we need it, but know where to go for that data, and know also what the networks are we can call on, like these guys here and the EC and so on. So that's something again where we're constantly building up and constantly trying to make contacts in order to be able to get relevant products out on the ground.
And from the WSP part,
I want to add to this. Yeah. So for the StandbyTaskForce, it is the thing that we are activated by an agency in the field, so we try to make sure we have an impact there. But still, I think you are referring, in the future there must be ways to better coordinate. And still now everybody is doing his own thing, and some are activated by other agencies, and we are activated by other agencies. But there must be a way to collaborate together in future. I mean, but I would be interested if you know of some efforts. Who is doing that? Who is trying to get an overview what's going on? Who is doing what? Is somebody trying to get an overview? That would be a good start,
Well, in April we have a meeting in Eastpro. We had a meeting in Eastpro with the International Charter, American organizations, UN Spider. They were all there. So yes, we do this.
Yes, and from the WFP part, when there is an emergency, or when we don't know, but kind of disaster could happen, and we don't know yet if it could be an emergency, because if people are not affected, this will not be an emergency. But what is sure is WFP is not able to produce this information at the beginning. So, of course, we work closely with other organizations to get some information, and mainly in the case of natural disaster, satellite imagery. So WFP doesn't own any satellites. Otherwise, okay, we will produce our data, and we will don't care about what other people do. But in the case of we need the base data, this kind of data is minimum for analysis or whatever. We have to be part of the network with partners and to get the data at the early beginning to be able to continue for our different needs. Yes.
Je me présente, c'est Vincent Slas du PAM, WFP de Kinshasa. Je voulais juste ajouter quelque chose sur ce que le collègue était en train de dire. En fait, au niveau du terrain, ce que l'on fait, on organise ce que l'on appelle Logistic Capacity Assessment. Donc, on prépare des données provenant des différents partenaires sur différents domaines, et en fait c'est une sorte de mise en commun de données de base en cas d'urgence. On déclenche en fait le processus du moment où déjà bien avant on a eu à préparer en fait les données et mettre en commun les données. Du moment où il y a une urgence, on sait plus ou moins par où on peut commencer, parce qu'on a une base de données déjà préparée sur les routes, sur tout ce qu'il y a comme cartographie et tout en fait. Donc c'est dans le cadre de Logistic Capacity Assessment par exemple que l'on prépare, on fait la mise en commun de données, et ces données proviennent des ONG qui sont sur le terrain, sur place, des systèmes de Nations Unies et tout. C'est un peu ça aussi.
Okay, merci. I think, do you want to react to this thing or another question? Because we already have another question there. We'll come up some. No.
Well, my question was also about talking to one another. We have heard the presentation of C.J. Hendricks in the session before about the HXL potential standard. Are you aware of such developments? And what is the source of the information, if yes, if you are aware of such developments?
For the StandbyTaskForce, the activity which I told you about in South Sudan, afterwards we tried to make geodata out of all the records we collected. And at the moment we are already collaborating with UN OCHA staff, and we try to add to this model, and we try to reorganize the data in order to make it possible to share it through this to these standards, and we want to have some best practices of how volunteers can create these data in a very effective manner, and if they're able to do this. So we are aware of this, but in a very, very early stage.
I mean, one of the things, I don't know if this directly answers your question, but one of the things that's kind of frustrating for me at this kind of gathering is to hear about these kind of initiatives and these tools and that tools and know that we simply don't have the capacity to be able to put the resources into them that we would like to be able to do. And so for an NGO like MapAction, which just has a few paid staff, it's very difficult to try and allocate resources in a way that's going to make best use of those resources. So what we're looking for and what I've been looking for this week, is stuff that's really easy to use, that's standards-based, that's open, that can be deployed quickly and easily, that meets all these kind of requirements and that supports collaboration and supports information dissemination, but without putting either a technical or a human resources or other kinds of overheads on us, which we don't have the capacity to deal with. So, there's a lot of things we're kind of keeping a watching brief on and waiting to the point where we can just move in and implement quickly and easily. But there's also other things which we're thinking, yeah, that sounds great, but we just don't have time to look at that at the moment.
Okay. Maybe the last question?
Ludovic Boyer from CartONG. We are talking about the cloud. We are talking about collecting data. I think at the moment, more and more, it's possible to get many different kinds of data from the ground, from the field, and the cloud is the way to get it. But there is, in my opinion, a very, very important point to manage in the same time. It's about metadata, to know exactly what we can find, where, and coming from which organization. Because when we have a big amount of data coming from everywhere, I think when we are, as a user, looking for something to manage a project, we have to know what to find and where. And I think it's a very important point with this idea of cloud. What do you think about this?
I'm very glad to hear metadata mentioned again. I was interested, sitting in the presentations this morning, that we sat through 3 or 4 presentations on data, and nobody mentioned metadata until the question and answer stage. So I thought that was interesting. Metadata, I think, comes in the category of what I was saying before. It's one of the things that is going to help organisations like MapAction to find the data that we need to do searches, to manage it, to disseminate it. and so on. So it's absolutely key to have metadata standards in place, metadata processes, metadata tools that are going and able to support all that. So all this data sharing, all this collaboration, if it's not based on metadata, it's not going to get very far, in my opinion.
As I presented before, the new tools that WFP is going to use, GeoNode, will take a part of metadata. And we hope that this system will be used and it will be filled in correctly in terms of metadata, because it will be easy to upload any layer, any data, but for the moment the part of metadata is not mandatory. But for the main layers and main data that we are going to share in the first time, it will be fully completed. And just before the lunch, I think we are going to take the very last question here.
Pierre-Marie Saran from Core Risk International. I would like to ask you if there is any restriction on dissemination of your maps to the general public or end users in the field.
In our case, it's the authorized user or the associated user who is requesting the activation who disseminates the map. Of course, when it's a kind of sensitive item, it's written on the map that it's not for dissemination, or that it's only for governmental instances. So normally there's a disclaimer on the map, in our case.
Yeah, I think our response will be very much the same. You know, our default position is to publish everything that we produce and to make it available. But where there are sensitivities, you know, where we're producing something locally which can't be more widely disseminated, then obviously we won't do so. But we'll be reluctant to do that. I mean, normally we try to get the content out there as quickly as we can.
The same with WFP. We produce a lot of maps, and they are, for a lot of them, they are shared and they are public. Of course, there are some disclaimer on it, and there are a couple of cases where maps are not shared for political reason, for sensible reason. I'm thinking about the current crisis of Syria right now. Even internally, sometimes we are not allowed to share the maps. So it's very sensible, and it's even for us who are working on that. It's a lot of pain to understand to who we have to produce a map and to who we are able to share it.
For the StandbyTaskForce, it depends on the activity. But for example, in the Libya crisis map, it was when you create a crisis map, it's open to the public, so you can have a look at it. But in the case of Libya, the information on the map could have been used by the regime. So the public map was made public always 24 hours after the last feed came in. So that it was a little bit delay. That was to prevent that the regime could have used the data for bad things. And for example, for the South Sudan data, we want to make it also. We want to make it open to the public, and we want to share the data, the geodata, in OpenStreetMaps, for example. So we always try to make it open.
Thank you. I think we are going to have lunch. But first, I think Martin has announcements to do. Okay, so we still have time.
Thank you. Frederic Ham from Action Against Hunger, Spain. Regarding all disasters that could occur, some are at larger extent. I'm thinking of the activation from at which stage or which threshold do you consider an activation will be okay for you all?
We have divided in rush and non-rush, as you have seen. Of course, when it's a very big extent, it should be considered as a non-rush activation. But for a non-rush activation, I think without exaggeration, of course, but to a large extent is possible.
For us, we don't activate; we get activated. So, essentially, we wait to be asked to turn up. So that might be a national government, might be UN OCHA, might be another agency. But the way our systems works, we'll monitor. Clearly, we keep an eye on disasters, impending disasters, floods, earthquakes, hurricanes, whatever, so that we're ready to go if the call comes. But we wait until somebody says you're needed out in the field, and then we put together a team and send them out.
Yeah, as I already mentioned in the talk, it's the same with us. So we can't activate ourselves. That would be not very good if we would do this. So we wait that we get activated, and then we follow up specific activation criteria. So one very important criteria is if the organization that wants to activate us is already in the field. If they have staff in the field and that they have already a situational awareness. And then it depends if the organization knows what we can deliver, and then we have to figure out if we really can help them, because one other criteria is that we want to have an evaluation afterwards, if our efforts really had an impact. So we have several criteria which we check once we receive an activation request, and then we decide.
In our case, we can activate ourselves because we're a commercial company, and we're rather autonomous in a lot of our actions. In most cases, we're put to work by agencies that need data. However, there are instances such as Sandy in New York. We're based in Boston, so we have a lot of assets in that area. So we're up and flying Sandy, especially the burned out houses, that area, within I think it was 36 hours as soon as the weather cleared. So it's a varied response from the whole community, I would imagine.
In our case, in terms of mapping, I'm going to reply to this side. We don't need to have any activation or whatever. What we do is we have people who monitor different situations, and in any case of this situation, even if it's not so important, we are going to produce maps anyway for the manager for taking decision. And if it's become emergency, we are going to work more and more on this case. Otherwise, it's not because somebody says that there is emergency that we are going to work. As I said before in my presentation, we work on preparedness phase up to the post-emergency. So we always monitor the situation and we work on it. Then, if the question was for the WFP part to bring the food and all the operation of the organization, I will not be able to answer to this question. And I think it's not linked really with the mapping emergency topic. Is it okay? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
We have made these very nice user guides. So if you would be able to do an activation, or you would think about it, I mean, I brought them from GRC, so it would be a pity to bring them back. So I will put them there, and if you're interested, you can take one. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think now it's time of lunch. Bon appétit.
And don't forget to let me know if you want to do some translation into French.